we are live. I'm so excited. I have been waiting for this day since I booked Brian Fanzo. And so today we are discussing how to identify and how to become a paid speaker. I know that this is something that many of us are so passionate about. And Brian is, I don't even feel like I need to introduce you, Brian. Like almost every single person knows who you are. You are such an amazing speaker, keynote speaker, and you have like you host 3 podcast interviews, and overall just like a great person. And we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Periscope, on YouTube, and let us know, hey everyone, join us from multiple different channels and let us know where you are joining us from, geographically speaking and social media wise. And today we are discussing how to identify and how to leverage paid speaking gigs. So before I get started, just want to introduce our amazing, I just love Brian so much. And just want to introduce him a little bit. He's a millennial keynote speaker, a storyteller, a podcast host. You have 3, right? 3 podcasts.
3, yes. 3.
I struggle with one. And
Well, trust me, I struggle with it. Just because I have 3 doesn't mean I struggle.
yeah. And I have been knowing you for quite a few years. We connected on Snapchat a few years ago, and a few years ago, you really stood out to me as an amazing storyteller. I can relate to you, and some of the favorite hashtags I love from you. Think like a fan, right?
Yes.
And bring good people together to do good things. So I love
Oh, yeah.
those things. And today we are discussing how to become a paid speaker. So thank you so much for coming here, sharing everything with you. This is your second time to be on my show. So really excited. So thank
I'm
you.
excited to be back. I'm excited you have me here. And I think last time we talked about a little bit of that origin story, but I think it's fun for me. I love, like you said, connecting great people with great people to do great things. And watching you do all these great things, not only doing amazing things, but you're doing it around the world. So it's my pleasure. We got to hang out in person a little bit earlier this year as well. And you're LinkedIn and Adobe, which are 2 people that I've had the pleasure of working with. So I'm excited to be back for a second time for sure.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm just double checking to make sure we are actually live on multiple channels.
I see us on I see Krista Fabric is in there on Facebook. So I know Facebook we're live.
Okay, awesome. And I'm going to check on LinkedIn, and I know my dear friend Peter is in the audience and kind of monitoring comments. If you guys have any question, please feel free to, I will show Peter's name on the screen in a second. Let him know if you have any questions related to how to identify and how to become a paid speaker. So let's get started. Are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yes. So as I introduced you earlier, you are the one of the few truly dynamic and amazing speakers I have ever connected in person. And so can you please share with us your speaking journey?
Sure. And I think, I appreciate those kind words. That means a lot for me. And, I like to say my mom said I came out of the womb talking. So I was born as someone that liked to talk. But I didn't really understand that professional speaking was a career in probably until about 7 years ago or so. I thought of it as something that mostly were celebrities or famous people are doing. But for me, my speaking journey actually started. I like to say I was one of those unique people in school. I went to school. I was a computer science major. Joined my fraternity. I was a president of my fraternity, and I played college hockey. And I was the only person that was on the hockey team and also a computer science major. I was the only one that was a computer science major that was also in a fraternity. And so I had this unique opportunity where I brought people together just based on them knowing me, and I kind of connected those dots. And so for me, I think a lot of what I got used to doing was kind of, I like to say, translating different groups of people, bringing people together. And then, I started working for the Department of Defense in cybersecurity here at the U.S. government in Washington, D.C. And that's really where my journey started. And it wasn't anything glamorous. I had a boss at the time that kind of just said, you're the only non-white-haired you're the young guy in cyber. We want to help make you the face of a lot of the things that we're doing in this organization. We want to recruit younger people. And so they sent me to a 4-day training course that was about public. It wasn't really as much public speaking. It was more communication skills. And they told you to slow down, not talk with your hands, not wear anything on your head, look professional, just all these things. And for me, I realized quickly that it was something that I really enjoyed and came natural to me, but it was just part of my job. I spoke at different government facilities. I spoke at the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon here in the United States. And I did that job for about 9 years. And then I became an evangelist, which was my dream job for a data center startup in Phoenix, Arizona. And so for me, the first job, I was working for the government speaking. The second one was I was speaking on behalf of my company. And we were the startup. The CEO I worked for was amazingly smart, but he didn't really like dealing with like the public speaking world. And so for me, I had to speak at VMworld. I got to introduce at Amazon Web Services. I got to introduce the CEO of Netflix. I got to be on all these big stages. But for me, it was still just part of my job. And then about 5 years ago, I decided to go out on my own. And I can tell you, I tried to go out on my own. And I was like, okay, well, I've spoken on these stages. I want to start like a marketing consultancy. I'm just going to speak on these stages. And when I started reaching out to marketing people or social media people, most of them were like, who are you? Where'd you come from? And so I almost had to start over from scratch about 5 years ago and say, okay, how do I get on stages for free? How do I start, putting myself out there? How do I establish myself as a thought leader? And then slowly building it. And I can tell you, even at the time, most of my business was consulting and influencer work that I was doing. And then about 3 years ago, and it's kind of fun to talk about the journey now, but like 2016, 20% of my business was speaking. 2017, it was about 50%. And then last year was about 80% of my business was speaking. And this year it'll be about 90% of my business. So I've been speaking since 2005, but I haven't really figured out the path of it. I still haven't figured out the path, but I didn't really look at it as a career. But I can tell you, it's I've been to 76 countries. I get to travel the world. It's the job I want to do for the rest of my life. It's definitely something that I love, but it's not an easy path. And the interesting thing about public speaking, there's no right way to do it. If you write a book or you don't write a book, if you become a thought leader, you don't become a thought leader. If you speak on thousands of little stages and then you get invited to a big stage, or maybe you get one opportunity because a friend gets you on one big stage and things blow up. So part of the reason I love it is it's one of those careers that allows people to use what they do best to kind of grow and get the opportunities.
Wow, you were just like, I can see you love talking. You're so passionate. You could just host this show for me, Brian.
No way.
So yeah, we have quite a few people here: Peter, Elizabeth, and Lori, and Lucille. So thank you so much, everyone. I will have a bunch of people join us on LinkedIn, and I don't think I'm live on my personal page, so maybe my Wi-Fi connection is not that good, but I'm live on my public page on Facebook. So we have a bunch of people. Angus is here. So thank you so much, everyone.
Hey, Angus.
Yeah, so you mentioned you have been speaking for quite a few years. So what are some of the major trends that you notice in the speaking industry, Brian?
So I think when it comes to speaking, it's an interesting space. I think right now, I think there's an element where just because you put in your bio that you're a public speaker doesn't mean you're a public speaker. And I can honestly say I kind of felt guilty to that. This is in a world we're living in right now. The trend we're living in is that social media has given everybody a microphone, and I believe it's a good thing. I believe that everyone has a story to tell, and everyone should be empowered to tell it. The problem is, just because you have a story to tell doesn't mean you need to be shouting it from a stage. It's also a problem where it's saying that, to be a great speaker, in my opinion, you have to kind of hold three characteristics around what you're delivering. And those three things for me are: you have to motivate, you have to inspire, and you have to educate. Which, of course, I know you appreciate the third one a lot. But I think for anyone that's kind of looking in this space, and to be able to do those three things in a manner where you can relay information to people that have their captured attention is no easy task, right? And so I don't think you have to have 25 years of experience to be a great speaker, but I do believe you have to have your story understood. You have to be able to convey what you know in a way that relates to a mass group of an audience. And the other thing we see as a trend is that just because you have a lot of followers, just because
Oh,
even just because you've written a book, or even just because you've gotten on a couple of stages here and there. I think the interesting thing for me is that there's a difference between getting paid to speak and building a speaking business. And I can tell you the second part of that, building a speaking business, which is what I'm working on at the moment, is no easy task. Because the thing that I always like to say this, I think I'll set the stage this way. I worked for an enterprise company that had 25,000 employees. I worked at a startup that would hire 12 new hires a week for over 2 years that I worked there. And I've been an entrepreneur myself now for 5 years. Without question, the entrepreneur job is the most difficult, the most stressful, the most time consuming, and
wow.
honestly, at the moment, the least financially rewarding, right? So
Mm,
we hear lots of glamour around entrepreneurship. There's also lots of glamour around the public speaking side. Like, wow, you
oh,
get paid money to go up there for 1 hour. And what I can say is, for me, growing a speaking business has been extremely difficult, because part of the thing as a speaker is once you get hired to speak, you speak that 1 year, they're not going to invite you back more than likely the next time. And so it's
mm-hmm.
constantly a business development game. It's constantly a game of, figuring out how to build connections with other speakers, with event organizers, with bureaus, with quote companies. And so it's an interesting space that we're in. But I think what the cool thing is there's lots of stages. There's more events right now than I think, in my opinion, than there's ever been before. Even people are putting on their own masterminds and their own events. And so I feel like if it's something that you want to dabble in, the opportunity to get on small stages and test things out are there. But speaking isn't for everyone, just like I don't believe entrepreneurship isn't for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And speaking is not as glamorous and as beautifully well designed, as a business, as many might seem it be. But it's definitely, we're in an interesting space as far as what does thought leadership mean, and how do you convey trust? And I'll say this, kind of wrap the trend part, is that I believe one of the things that you have to remember as a speaker is your job is not to be smarter than the audience. Your job is not to,
Wow.
you don't have to be an expert in everything. What you have to be really good at, and what you end up getting paid for, is people want your opinion and your take on something, and they want it in a way that can relate and either get people to move in whatever direction you want them to move. And so for me, like, live video was a great way to get me started, being able to start this whole concept of, talking to myself, figuring out what works. I use social media every day to test out things that I use on stage. AI, you followed me since Snapchat. I mean, I will do Instagram stories where I talk about one topic for an entire week, and all I'm doing is testing the engagement of my audience to say, do they like that example? Do they like that topic? And then I try to put it into my presentation, and then I'm going to spend hours working on that. And so there's a kind of a interesting time that we're living in. But I do believe everyone has a story to tell. It's just a matter of figuring out the right vehicle to tell that story. For some people, it's podcasting and video. For other people, it's stages as a public speaker.
Wow, you're just like so amazing. I don't even need to ask you any questions. Just like, like, yeah, this is it's amazing. So I love how you mentioned, so for speaking, we try to motivate, inspire, and educate. So do we have to bring those three elements to every single talk that we give? So can you just elaborate on those three elements a little bit?
So I don't think you need to bring all three of those elements to every talk that you give. I do believe, especially from, the difference between a workshop and a presentation, or a presentation and a keynote, depending on who your audience is, how much time you have. But the reason I use those three as the skill set is I do believe you have to have those skills in your pocket, right? You have to be able to, adapt. And I think one of the weird, elements, when people ask me, like, what's the skill that I leverage the most as a speaker, funny enough, I played semi-professional poker for multiple years, and it's actually my poker skills that are what I use the most as a speaker, because I read the audience. So I'm really good at understanding body language. I'm
Yeah.
really good at testing things. So I will actually, in my presentations, every time I have an example where I'm going to tell a story, I have a 2-minute story of the 2-minute version of that of story, and I have a 5-minute version of that story. And the way that
Yeah.
I gauge that is as I'm introducing that story, I'm reading the audience to determine, do they need me to go in more in depth? Are they confused? Or are they coming to me? Are they engaged? Are they nodding their heads? If they're nodding their heads and with me, it's a 2-minute story, because I back it up with a story and I move on. if I kind of lost them, maybe I have to go to this 5-minute story. And so I think to be able to be really good, especially today's, I mean, the world we're living in right now, there's some amazing speakers. It's no longer just a TEDx talk. It's no longer just, and people can do it in all kinds of different ways. I'm loud. I'm passionate. I can't turn this off. This is
You
me
are
24
you.
hours a
You
day.
are you. Exactly.
I am. There's other people that like my friend Amy Landino, I co-host the Just Try This podcast with. She is elegant. She uses her stage presence, her poise. We have kind of two different approaches, yet we can get audiences to do different things that we want. And so I think for me, like that's kind of how I wrap it up. And those three things, it's probably more generalized than that. But when I look at, I identify speakers that I think are amazing. I'm very fortunate. I go to about 60 events a year, so I get to see a lot of great speakers. The speakers that I feel are really, really good, and it's a wide range, right? From technology to marketing to inspiration. I have a new couples vlog that I just started with my girlfriend Jennifer, and I'm focusing on the travel industry. So I've been studying a lot of travel speakers, and I really do think the way that you deliver it, there's 1,000 different ways to do it. But I do feel like you have to have in your bag the ability to inspire people to think beyond where they're at or to open their mind. You need to be able to motivate them to take some kind of action. My press the damn button, right? Like that's the action that I try to convey. And then the last one is educate. And I think the education side is the most important. Part of the reason you and I connected at the beginning was, I was the worst student ever. I was diagnosed ADHD at 31, but like I apologize to every high school teacher I ever had, every middle school teacher, every college professor. But for me, when I got out, like part of my job was teaching security courses to the active duty military. And I built out all of these training courses. And so I've spent most of my career building out curriculum to deliver things that are very complex, like cybersecurity and these tools that I was doing. And so for me, being able to educate people, the whole adage that used to say, and I've hated this adage since day one, that people that can't do teach. And I think that is the opposite today, right? People that can do and understand what they do and why they do it and how they do it are the ones that teach and are really the leaders of the world we're living in today. I do feel we're kind of flipping the bubble at the moment, and I think social media has a little bit to do with it. But I'm all for the power of education and being able to educate people in all different forms.
Yeah, I so agree. I'm actually right now at Adobe attending an education event, and I'm trying to inspire other educators to really embrace this platform. Like right now, we have almost 40 people joining us on LinkedIn, a dozen on different platforms, and we are literally from different countries all over the globe, and we are here being teachers and students at the same time to learn from each other. This is so amazing. So I really love everything you mentioned. And we have a few questions. So do you mind taking a few questions
Let's
from
do it. I will. I love questions.
Yeah, from our live audience. So let me do a quick screen share. So I have to thank my dear friend Peter for
Thank you, Peter.
for getting all the questions. So the first one is from Anna. Can you see the screen?
Yep,
Brian?
I can see it.
So she asked, do you have to become an expert, and do you have to write a book or ebook in order to speak? To become.
So I would argue that if you are trying to be an expert, you will fail for the rest of your life. I don't believe being an expert is what you need to be. You do not need to know everything, and I don't believe any speaker is an expert. I believe to be a speaker is not about being expert. It's about being able to convey your point of view, the way that you do things, in a manner that relates to others. And it could polarize others or it could inspire others, right? Like that relationship is one. And so when I look at this, it is not about expertise. The reason this is one of my favorite things to really hit home is that nobody is an expert. In the world full of change today, things change so fast. It's not about expertise. It's rather about how can I help people see the light by sharing what I've done and what I'm doing. I think some of the best speakers out there now are ones that have failed, and they talk about their failures, and they're able to articulate things that allow us to have conversations about topics we normally would not have had, and they are the opposite of an expert in that field. And so what I would say that is, you don't need to be an expert, but I will say that you do need to have a point of view. you do need to have some experience with it, and you have to be able to back it up, right? I think there's a difference between validating what you know and having experience. Like when someone,
Oh, wow, I love that.
people tell me you have to have experience to get on stage. Well, experience usually people measure in years. What I like to say is I like to have validation where I don't measure that in years. I measure that in results. And so if you have the results that back up what you're talking about, that's what you need. It's not the number of years that you're doing something. So it's not about, you don't have to have a book. I will say that having a book does make it easier. It's something that I know I've needed to have a book, but for the record, I have 0 books. I have not, published a book at the moment, and I'm doing this full time, and for my career. So I was told early on that if you don't have a book, you'll never speak on the different stages. And I'm one of those people. When you tell me that I will never do something, I will prove you wrong.
Prove you wrong.
So,
Amen.
great
Amen.
question.
I love that. So thank you for that question. So here's another question from my friend Lucille, and she asked you, like, what has made you decide to focus on speaking?
So this is an interesting one, and this is a big one for me. When I was working at the U.S. government in the cybersecurity space, I was one of the youngest, executive levels that was in my entire organization, and I was having a lot of success, although we were merging different groups of the company. And it was at that moment I decided that I could stay in cybersecurity in the government space for the rest of my life and be very successful. I made more money back then in 2012 when I worked for the government than I do today, right? I made more money in that space. But at that time, I made a commitment and said, I want to impact more people. I don't want to just drive change in the government. I want to truly change the world. And so that's where I kind of found social media. And then as I found social media, I started to realize being able to convey my message in a noisy digital world is great and exciting, but I feel as though I have something else to offer. And so the stage to me, I can tell you, I've never got nervous getting on the stage, but every single time I've stepped on the stage, I've had the same level of excitement from 10 people in the audience to 14,000 in the audience, the biggest presentation I've given.
Absolutely.
Each time it's been in my blood, but it's weirdly enough, it probably wasn't something I actually strategically thought of. What I realized was people started asking me to speak, and they're like, "Oh, well, you spoke there. How much do you charge?" And I started to just throw out a number, and people were like, "Oh, that's all." And I was kind of like, "Oh, well, maybe I can turn this into a business." And then I reached out to the greats like Jay Baer and Scott Stratton and Andrew Davis, and I started to build like an army of people that were in this space doing it full time. But it wasn't something that I was like, "Oh, there's a speaker, I want to do that." But I will say there was a couple times at a couple different events that someone moved me so much that I said, if I do want to change the world, I want to be able to do it the way that they're changing me. And that's kind of how I fell into this world.
Yeah, I love it. I saw you speak so many times, Brian. I feel like every single time you just like outdo yourself. It is so amazing. And you become so alive on stage, so dynamic. I can see this is your calling. You just feel so energized. So I think, you really understand who you are. And I think this deep understanding of ourselves can help us kind of really discover what is our call. So I also love how you mentioned, like you're talking about being paid. So like my friend Elizabeth, she has this question. I think that's the question many people have. I have this question myself. So like, how much do you decide like you want to charge, right? And do you still do talks for free? Like I feel like this is so important, but we don't really talk a lot about this. And a common thing that we hear is, oh, you do this for exposure. Like how much is too much? So if you can share with that would be great. Yeah.
Well, so first off, I don't know if anyone has found it. I haven't found it yet, but I haven't had any bank that I'm able to cash in my exposure for to pay my mortgage. And so until there's an exposure bank that I can actually go and tap into, that's not something I'm going to, kind of build into. But to answer that kind of question, so first off, I think, in this space, it's an interesting arena because everyone can speak for different reasons, right? Just because you're not getting paid dollars for your time on stage doesn't mean you're not making money as a speaker, right? If you're driving leads to your agency, maybe you're connecting with new people to build relationships on something else that you're working. Maybe it's just the book that you're validating what you know. But I don't like to use that kind of like that sugarcoat answer. Where I like to go on this is the thing that I've learned probably the most is that you will get $0. You'll never get paid anything if you're never willing to ask to get paid, right? Like, no,
Ah,
that's just kind of one of those weird spaces. And making that ask has always been difficult for me. It's something that I've struggled with. What I did to kind of get over that hump is that I put together a package that said anyone that hires me, they're going to get me for a full day. I'm going to guarantee 10 to 20 tweets on the hashtag. They're going to get a video beforehand. They're going to get a
ooh,
video afterhand. I'm going to amplify their events. And I'm also going to speak on a topic. And the reason I did all of that was when I throw out the number, I felt bad. Like I actually was like shy about asking for the number. But when I made a package that I felt was truly valuable for that dollar, I was then very confident in asking for it. Now, to answer the question on like the speaking non-paid and how that works, not all, many events don't pay any speakers, right? Which, is very interesting. If they're making money off of the tickets, and yet what people are going there for is the speakers and they're not paying for it, I do have a problem with that overall model. But there is something to be said about kind of like, how do you connect the dots? And one of my secrets to that is, you want to make sure to tell people, that this is something that you get paid for. Often people know you get paid. And then oftentimes people say, well, I don't have the budget to pay for a speaker. And then, looking for, well, do you have a webinar budget? Do you have a budget for sponsor amplification? Do you have a budget for employee advocacy? And like, oh, okay, well, how about I do a webinar after I speak and you can pay me that fee, right? Like kind of getting creative in what they're doing. The other thing that I do is I always invoice. I don't ever speak for free. I just speak oftentimes for 100% discount. And what I mean by that is I actually send them an invoice for my speaking fee. And then I say discounted by 100%, and I use the reason. And the part of the reason I put that out there is I want them to know that not only are they getting a good deal, and this is how much my going rate is, but I want them to remember that this is a business transaction, because a lot of times that exposure conversation comes into fold because people do feel as though what they're providing you can't get anywhere else. And so I think this is one of those delicate balances. Now, to answer the last part of the question, I do speak a certain amount of events for free. But I will tell you the events that I speak for free, they either don't pay any of the speakers, and I've found it valuable for my business, or I actually have one of these crazy yellow boards. Actually, the board's over here, but you guys can't see it. But I have a crazy spreadsheet that has about 40 columns, and within those 40 columns are how I rank the event. I rank it by things
wow.
like how many people in the audience could have a budget to afford me to speak for their company? How many people in the audience don't know me? This is actually something
This is
that I found out is
amazing.
the best audiences for me are audiences that have never heard of Brian Fanzo or iSocial Fans. And when I go up there, like, oh God, another millennial with a backwards hat and crazy shoes. That audience is the best audience for me to do business development, because I'm able to come onto the radar. I'm able to present my way of delivering things, and I get the most amount of leads that direction. And so what I do is I strategically look at every opportunity and I try to measure it. And so I don't actually look at how much I'm getting paid as the value of an event. I actually just recently turned down an event that was, a $10,000 opportunity, and I had a $5,000 opportunity, but the $5,000 opportunity was giving me in my spreadsheet many more things that I was looking for, right? Access to executives. It was also giving me a connection to a brand and an industry that doesn't know me very well, right? Like all of these things are things you have to think about. And so I think there's a matter here where don't ever put yourself in the say, I'm speaking for free. What you need to kind of calculate in your head is I'm giving them a discount to be able to deliver what I'm doing on stage. How is this time valuable for me, right? And for some people, exposure is something of value. I can tell you, in certain audiences and certain industries or verticals, me getting exposure is a good thing, right? I actually value the exposure, but I actually break exposure down in a much more simpler space where I say exposure to who, exposure how, and then the last one exposure and when will it turn into something, right? Being exposed to a bunch of 19-year-old entrepreneurs is a great thing for me because this is a new audience that doesn't know me. The problem is a 19-year-old entrepreneur can't afford my speaking salary for another 6 years for the most part. Therefore, all the exposure would be great. The when I could actually cash that in is too far down the road for me, and I would turn down those kind of opportunities.
Oh wow, it's just like so many amazing points. I love this. So do you actually ask the conference organizer what are the demographics of the audience, or you do your own research?
I do a little bit of both. And so I stalk the hashtag. Every single inquiry that I get in, I immediately load it into to Twitter. I look at the hashtag from last year's event. I use a tool called
Wow.
BuzzSumo, where we put the name of the event in BuzzSumo to figure out who spoke there last year. I also go into LinkedIn. I dive into LinkedIn and I start to look at not only who works for the company, but who else is following that company. I do a lot of that my own research, but I do set the stage with every event. I usually ask two questions. The first one I say, what does success of this event look like for you, right? I want them to tell me what their ultimate goal of the event is, right? And because there's sometimes where even if they're paid, I'm not the right person, right? When someone sends Brian, I want to sell out 40,000 seats. Hiring me, I'm not a celebrity. My name on a billboard does not sell a ton of tickets. But what I tell them is that when people come and see me speak and see how much I care about the audience, the
Mhm.
community, and your brand, I will sell tickets for next year's event and probably the year's event afterwards. And so I'm very confident in saying that now, but that's kind of those things that you want to learn. And then the second thing I say is, what other speakers have spoken in front of this audience?
I love
What is
this.
what has not worked? And then I like to say, and I'll tell you, almost every, industry event will tell you we have experts, we have executives, we have thought leaders, and you can't just take that as an answer. So I will say, like,
Um,
well, which brands do you have? Well, how many people of that brand are coming? What are some of these things that are going on? And I think it's up to us to kind of do that research. And let's face it, on
so
social
true.
media today, if you want the information, it's available. You just have to put in the work to actually go look.
So true, and be very intentional. So I also love how you mentioned, how when you are selecting which conference to speak at, you don't just think about how much you are going to be paid. So here's a quick story. At the same time, we have 17 people joining us live, Brian. So
Nice.
amazing. So let us know. Um, so let us know which country you are joining us from. And so a quick story. So I was at a VidCon like a few weeks ago. So this
Yeah.
person, he was sharing a story. So he is actually a YouTuber. He talks about tools, technology, but he got invited to speak at a conference for children for toys. And he spoke at the conference, but it was totally the wrong audience, the wrong target. And
Mm.
so after the event was over, so he got all those like parents following him. So he shared with us he had to work really, really hard to associate with that group of audience because it is not his target audience. So it is very interesting that you mentioned that. I so agree. So let's do a few more questions from our live audience. So can you see the screen?
I can.
Okay. So this one is from Angus. So he asked pretty much how do you find stakeholders for conferences and how did you approach them for having you speak for
So
honor
I like this question. So I think the neat part about this is the avenues that you have into an event or a company can come from all different spaces, right? Like ideally having the event organizer, direct contact is where most people would say is the best place. I would argue it's not the best space. And this is my strategy on that. If everyone is beating down the door of the event organizer to speak there, everyone is contacting directly. I choose to make advocates or connect with people that would better understand my world. And so I follow, I'm doing some, let's just call it business development research for the fall of 2020 on events that I want to speak at. I'm currently following them on Twitter. I have them all in a private Twitter list where I'm amplifying their content.
Wow.
I'm replying back to different things. I've now connected with a lot of them on LinkedIn. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to build that rapport and that connection 6 months out before the event. And then I will actually oftentimes message the social media manager and say, hey, I know that thanks so much for sharing my content and replying to me. Is there any chance that you have the information of who I could talk to at your event? And I guess what I usually get? I usually get, Brian, oh my, you want to speak at our event? Let me advocate on your behalf. Can you get me your media kit? And so now instead of a cold
Wow.
ask, from Brian Fanzo. It is an ask from an internal employee, which we all know those ones, definitely carry more weight. But I think there's different avenues for different people. I also think the style of talk that you give. I know Angus. I actually just got to see Angus speak
It's
a couple of weeks
amazing.
ago in Lima,
Amazing.
Ohio.
Amazing.
He's
Amazing.
amazing, and I think there's also, when you're going in these different avenues, there's something you have to remember, is that the event organizer, what they care about oftentimes is not marketing, oftentimes not sales. It has a whole different arena. And so when you're trying to figure out your in, make sure that your in not only turns your advocate excited, but is also something the event organizer would want. I had one just recently say, Brian, I love that you offered to do a Facebook videos for our Facebook ads. I love that you offered to amplify this on social media, but I just want to let you know I could care less about the marketing and advertising and sales. I'm hiring you because this demographic about generational communication needs to be inspired to take action. And if they are inspired when they leave your session, that's how I measure success. And I was like, wow. So my entire package needed to be shifted to meet what that stakeholder, in the, that was running the event mattered to them. And so I do kind of do it social media is my place. If you're an author of a book and someone, is reading your book, why not have in the book? I think Scott Stratton does this. He'll actually say, like, email this email address if you got to this chapter and let me know what you're thinking, right? And now he's getting a communication started with someone that's reading his book. But I think there's lots of different avenues. For me, I've found I just need an advocate inside the brand that can see through me, because my appeal sometimes is off-putting for an executive, and they come around by the time they see me on stage. But I think I've found that if I can turn an employee or a social media leader or a digital leader, or even someone that goes to a lot of events for the company, if I can turn them into my advocate, it's the best path for me to get to book a deal.
I love this. Just kind of to follow up on this. So do you ever negotiate with whoever booked you in terms of, are you paying for my travel, accommodation? So you just, whatever they give you, you just take it. Do you ever negotiate with them?
So I negotiate everything. Every single thing is negotiable. I will tell you transparently, in February, I signed on with a speaker agent for the first time.
Oh, wow.
So for the last 4 years, I've been doing it all by myself, team of one. I negotiated all of my own speaking, which is something that I would say is put me at a disadvantage, right? Because if I want to convey that I get paid a certain amount of money to speak, when they're negotiating with the actual speaker, oftentimes they're like, well, he's not that big of a deal. He doesn't have an assistant or someone doing it. And so I do negotiate. And oftentimes the thing that I like to do is I like to set things out there and say, this is what I need to be successful. This is how much I charge. And when someone says, this is the budget, or this is how much I've ever paid for speakers, that then gives us some wiggle room to go from there. And sometimes I can tell you, sometimes I'll say, well, if we can't make up that $5,000 difference, is there an opportunity for me to have a dinner with some of the executives? Is there an opportunity for me to talk to some of the sponsors? Maybe a couple of your sponsors would love for me to do a Facebook Live from their booth, and they might pay that $5,000 difference. So negotiating is definitely something that I can tell you. One of my favorite things about having a speaker agent is that gets taken off my shoulders. I now am able to funnel that over to Michelle Joyce. Michelle Joyce Speakers is the name of the speaker agency that I'm working with, and she handles not only leads that come through the bureau through her, but she takes on every one of my leads. Now I pay her, I pay her a monthly piece as well as a piece of each lead. But taking that off my shoulders has been amazing.
No, that's great. And then you can really just focus on what you are so good at, which is to craft your message and do speaking. Yeah. So here's
remember the word negotiation, we need to disassociate the word negotiation from money. Because when you're negotiating, money is the thing that I'm the worst at negotiating. But whenever people are like, Brian, you've worked with that brand and you got all of these things, how did you do that? And I was like, well, they weren't going to pay me this amount of money, so I made them give me this kind of things, and it turned into $50,000 worth of work. And they're like, so I think when you think about it, think about ways, and I have this written down in my spreadsheet, and I specifically say, okay, if they're not meeting the dollar amount, where other things can they provide me of value? Maybe it's a professionally shot video of me on stage. Maybe it's giving me the opening keynote spot, which I know I love, or even the closing keynote, press the damn button talk. So like negotiation for me sometimes is like, ooh, if you can't come to me on the price, There's some other things that can make me happy. I think that's
Yeah,
important
yeah.
to understand in the speaking space.
Oh, this is so good. Yeah. So here's a really quick question from Katie. I don't know if she's interested in working with you. So can you just share with us what do you talk about, Brian?
Sure. So I don't talk about cybersecurity specifically today. What my talks are, I have 4 key programs at the moment. 2 of them have been around, for a little over a year and a half, which is Think Like a Fan. So Think Like a Fan is a more marketing talk, customer experience, where I focus on helping the audience put themselves in the shoes of their fans and create content, conversations, and social media from the fans' perspective. The second talk, which is Press the Damn Button, is a talk that it's really about, I believe everybody has a story to tell. And it's a talk where I'm focused on taking people and turning them into people that are taking action. The button isn't a video button. It's not a podcasting button. It's an action button, right? And so I talk about that everyone has a story to tell. And in the day and age where we used to say, we're going to let our work do the talking for us, right now there's people blasting messages. And if you're waiting for your work to do the talking for you, nobody's going to find you. So that's the second talk.
Uh-huh.
The third one I give is called Future Proofing Your Business, which is really about how do we understand innovation and technology and prepare ourselves for things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality without taking us away from our core business values today. So it's about listening for or marketing and connecting with where your audience is today and setting yourself up for tomorrow. And then the last one, which is probably I think it's my life's work. Like this is where I'm kind of pushing everything I want to move forward. This talk is called Digital Empathy. And the point of digital empathy is that I don't believe that we must disconnect from technology or remove technology. I don't believe technology has made the world evil. I believe technology has exposed the evil that is existing in the world today. And it's now our job to make one or two choices. Do we change who we are as humans and use technology to do amazing things? Or do we continue to blame social media and technology for the world that's always been bad that's now exposed? And so my goal in that talk is really to get people to understand how we can drive emotional intelligence as well as innovation together. But it's about how do we prioritize each. It's not about unplugging. And in the world we're living in today, I firmly believe the suicide rate should go down. I believe the fact that we are connected to our people, we should not feel alone. We should feel this amazing. I mean, we're doing this right now from across the United States. You and I have connected from 5 years, all via social media. Started at Snapchat, and we're living in a powerful world. And every generation before us was killed to be able to reach the world with the press of one button. Right, this opportunity. Problem we have right now is we have bad news and we have fake news. And that's what we're dealing with. And so the question becomes, how do we cut through the bad news and the fake news? We start amplifying the good news. We start understanding it's about people's emotions and the humanity. And we start doing that by using technology and social media to amplify the good, and it will drown out the bad. So those are my 4 talks that I have. If you want to see any of that stuff, I have a new speaker website, brianfanzo.com. So brianfanzo.com is actually my speaker website. It has all my talks on there. You can download the one-sheeters and even contact information for my agent. But those are the 4 talks. I'm giddy about those 4, and I'm actually working on my 2020 talk right now. I've already started the scripting of it and the building of it, but I'm not giving anybody the name of that until closer to the end of the year.
That sounds like so exciting. I was just being told by my neighbors for being too loud, but inside my heart, I'm like, yes, it's amazing. Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout to my dear friend Peter to monitor so many people's comments. So thank you so much. And I really just want to transition. You were talking about like marketing yourself. I think you are one of the really top people that I know. Like you market yourself so well. It's not like you are now pushing, but you share so much valuable content. So I want to ask you, is that your primary way to market yourself, or how do you balance that, like organic approach versus paid? So do you do any paid like marketing or advertising, Facebook ads to market yourself, or just everything's purely organic by sharing valuable content?
every single thing is organic. And,
Wow.
for me, it's built through relationships and the trust that I build via my content. Right. And for me, the thing that I learned, and I remember I talk about this story a lot, but November 2nd, 2013 was a moment for me whenever my mom had challenged me. I'm a mama's boy. My mom challenged me and said, Brian, you seem to be stressed about when you're sharing stuff online, but offline, the thing that you've always done is you're unapologetically authentic, who you are. You don't care that people don't like backwards hats. You don't care that people don't like, you talking with your hands. And it was that moment, November 2nd, 2013, that I wrote on my mirror, be yourself, right? It was that moment where I said, I'm going to be myself online, offline, everywhere I go. And so for me, when I'm looking at it, I use actually each social media channel differently for creating content. So I'm very strategic with organic, right? Like what I post on LinkedIn is targeted towards a demographic that has the budget to hire me, right? What I'm posting on Twitter is to establish thought leadership and credibility. What I'm posting on Instagram stories, where I bring people behind the scenes, I'm turning someone that might be a fan into an advocate, into an influencer, into my own sales and marketing, because so many of my leads come from this person on my team started watching you, and then they started listening to your podcast. Now we all listen to your podcast. We want you to come higher. And so I use those pieces as my vehicle. There isn't a paid game to it, but I can tell you, having a book would make things a lot easier. Having a podcast podcasting is probably one of my number one lead generators. But the number one lead generator, we're broadcasting on LinkedIn right now. My number one lead generator last year in 2018, 61% of my closed speaking leads came through LinkedIn. And so what I was doing on that was every week I was doing one video a week, not live, one video a week, uploading it to LinkedIn, and it converted 61% of my total leads. And the reason I like to say that is because people on Instagram, and this is not a shot at Instagram, but my fans and friends on Instagram say, Brian, oh my God, you're an amazing speaker. I would love to see you speak. Those on Instagram that consume my content say, Brian, you're an amazing speaker. How can I hire you to speak? That little difference has turned into me making LinkedIn my number one focus. And that's kind of how I move forward. I did see a great question come in. If you don't mind me asking this real quick. It was, a QC said, what is the first actual practical step to start speaking? This is a great one. Where's the first practical step? I think the first practical step is honing in the message that you want to actually convey. And I really think the best place to test it is video, right? Start putting out video content at the moment to not only establish your own credibility, but to prove that what you're saying matters to people. I can tell you, I had a talk called Millennial Mindset, and it was my favorite talk. I worked so hard on it. I bled it, but it didn't really work that well from an event hiring me. And I started to test it out on Periscope, on Facebook Live, and I started to realize that a lot of the people were polarized before they were able to listen to my content. And so that was one that really happened. And if you're already at that step and you think you have something to say, the thing that you have to do now is you need to hustle for every opportunity. And I'm talking local meetups. Contact your local American Marketing Association and tell them, hey, I want to be a part of it. I would love to speak. I can tell you some of my early speaking gigs that turned the hockey stick up. I spoke at an event in Dallas, Texas that had 18 people in it. 18 people. I flew down to Dallas on my own dime. I spoke in front of a group of 18 people. But within that 18 people, 2 people took pictures of me. One of them worked for Dell, and one of them worked for IBM at the time. Both of those pictures ended up being posted somewhere where it got connected, turned into 2 of the bigger leads that I had ever had at that time. And so it's not a matter of size of audience. It's about seizing those opportunities. And I can tell you, there's no science to that. And so I think part of it is that. The other piece of it is we don't really even need to see a video of you speaking. We need to trust that what you have to say is right for our audience. So I like to tell people, stop worrying about proving people that you should be on a stage. Stop trying to prove to people that this is something that you're a master of, and start building that trust at a deeper level. And also just remember, the amount of hours that we put into honing in our presentation, like AI, when you said, that you've seen me so many times speak and each time I got better, that gave me goosebumps, because I believe storytelling is the is the greatest thing in the world to study, because it can never be perfected. Because every single time you tell a story, one variable in your life changes, right? It could be the people in the audience, could be you, could be the background. And because storytelling cannot be mastered, it cannot be perfected, it is constantly figuring out different ways. And so for me, I don't try to reinvent the wheel for every presentation, but I do try to adapt and test things out. And you will not know what works and what doesn't work until you actually on that stage. And remember, the stage doesn't have to be, you know, a huge stage. I mean, some of the biggest and best opportunities I've had were internal teams that I've spoken in front of that have paid me $15,000 to $20,000, and it's a team of 25 in a conference room. But that space, is one of those vehicles. So think about it that side. I mean, go to meetup.com, look in your Facebook events, and look at the events that are going on. And here's the thing:
Oh,
don't
totally.
ask to be a speaker without doing your research on the event and understand and building out the use case, right? When you make the ask, you should say like, hey, I saw this person speak. I love this stuff going on. I enjoy where your event is going. I have content that does A, B, and C. I believe this method would work for that audience. And this is the action that I could get your audience to take, right? Like when you make an ask where you make it so simple and so much of a duh, like why isn't that person speaking? That's how you get on stages. Simply cold emailing everybody or Twitter, like, hey, going at the hashtag and saying, why am I not a speaker? I'm better than everybody on stage. What that says is like, oh, you are. Well, you don't know how to create a relationship or build an avenue in. And so I think that's a mistake a lot of speakers make.
Oh, this is so good. Yeah. By the way, I shared Brian's speaking website. So in the comment section, you guys can definitely check him out. Really, really like amazing. And speaking of LinkedIn, right now we have 60 people joining us on LinkedIn and 20 people on other channels combined. You can see that how powerful this is. So we have quite a few people who are kind of just like starting out on this journey. And I think you are just so great at balancing everything. So reflecting on your journey when you were just by yourself, Brian. So maybe you can share some tips with us. So how do we balance kind of like content creation and content consumption and also run a business? So like, what are some practical tips that we should do in order to just like, keep this going until we're able to hire someone?
So I mean, I think hiring someone is a must. And this is coming from someone that does not hire people. I was told in 2017, 2016, Brian, you need to bring on an assistant. Brian, you need to hire people. I can tell you it wasn't because I didn't want to give up control. A lot of it had to do with like not understanding how to do that, or not figuring out the time, or the money. I was going through a divorce at the time, and like figuring out all these different variables that were going on in my life. But I think figuring out how to build a team around you is extremely important. The other thing I like to say, and it kind of goes into, we'll switch hats. I'll put my press the damn button hat on for a second here. When I say press the damn button, here's what I want people to remember is that when you're creating content and anything that you're doing for your business, especially speaking business today, pressing the damn button means you don't know what works or how you feel comfortable until you press the button. But here's the key. Once you've pressed the button, you need to be strategic and methodical and analytical with every single thing that you're doing on social. And you need to be able to measure what you believe success is. Like I said, for me, each social network has a different banner of success, right? Like for me, I could get 2 people on LinkedIn to comment on a video, and I can get, I posted a video yesterday on Twitter. It's at 9,000 views on Twitter. Those 2 people on LinkedIn commenting is more of my focus. That I look at that as success. And another piece of it is you have to be able to measure and allow yourself to let the data allow you to move away from things. And this is coming from a guy that has FOMO, right? And like one of my commitments this year has been, or I'd say for the last 12 months, is that anything new that I take on, I have to drop something off.
That's so
If I'm
true.
going to take something on, I have to drop something off. And I think that is something that a lot of us struggle in. But I will tell you, the motivation for me to create content over and over again is because the analytics are telling me it's working, right? When I told you which one worked for me the best in 2018, I spent 2 weeks analyzing 2018 across all of my leads, emailing leads, reverse engineering things, just to figure out that LinkedIn had worked for me, right? So that number of 61%, that's because I was able to measure that. I think when I say press the damn button, people are like, so you just want people like putting crap everywhere? No. figure out how you tell your story and you get comfortable, and then be strategic with how you approach everything and prioritizing. And I think that's something that takes a little bit of time. But I mean,
So
I
true.
post, I think I create 10 videos a week. I host 3 podcasts. I haven't missed a day of Instagram stories since Instagram released stories. I've done 3,500 live streams since 2014. I create a ton of content, but also content creation is what leads to business leads and the relationships that I have. And so that's how I kind of connect all those dots. I don't believe you have to be on every channel. I don't believe you have to be as crazy about content as me. I believe if I would have been smarter with email marketing, if I would have brought in an assistant earlier on, if I would have written a book to begin with, these are things that would have been easier for me. But because I didn't do those things, and I say easier, not like easier like anyone can do them, but it would have allowed me to scale in certain ways. Because I wasn't checking those boxes, I had to go hardcore on content and social media. And that's kind of where it kind of left me.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's so amazing. Just listening to you, how many things you are doing, just feel like, oh my god, what am I doing here right now? So
You do a
you're,
lot of content too, AI. Let's be real. You do a ton of content as well
yeah,
and you're on different time zones with the kids and family. So
yes,
I respect and I think
uh,
that's the other piece is I don't look at it as a balance. And I see Lori King on LinkedIn. I got LinkedIn comments here. Thanks everybody watching on LinkedIn and sharing out on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn live video over there. She said, "How do I not burn out?" And I can tell you, I do burn out. And anyone that says they don't is full of crap. It does. I took the month of June off on 2 of my podcasts out of nowhere. I didn't even tell my audience to begin with. Like I let people know, but I got to a point where I looked at my priority list as well as my the time management and travel, and I said something's got to give. And that's something it's hard for me to do, but it's something else to admit. And the other thing about it is when I'm creating content or I'm doing something, I'm all in doing it. And then when I stop, I'm all in doing that. Right. And I think that is one of those pieces. I think last but not least is surround yourself with people. I think this is a mistake that we've often make as well. And I posted about this on Instagram. We oftentimes, and this is for me as a speaker, and I'm saying this as a speaker, we oftentimes measure and worry and take the criticism or the information from our peers, and we make decisions in our business based on our peers' opinion, those that are my fellow speakers. And what I've learned from that is they're not my target demographic. They're not my ideal customer.
so
And
true.
too often times I'm trying to impress someone that will never spend money with me, that will never be my direct business contact. And so I think it's extremely important in like the non-burnout world is to have people around you to kind of keep you in check, build that inner circle. I have a very intimate Facebook group of speakers that I've been a part of where we meet up offline once a year.
I
I've been
love
doing it
it.
now for 4 years. And that group is my sounding board. If I have a bad day, the tech doesn't work, I'm having imposter syndrome, whatever it may be. You have to have those people around you because I don't care who they are. And maybe Gary Vee is the exception, and he's just world class at what he does. But the rest of us, there are ups and downs. There are good days. There are bad days. There are plenty of days that I look at, oh my God, I'm supposed to do a podcast and 2 videos today. And it's a matter of remembering why you're doing it. And then I would say that my best advice to that is, yes, the energy I have, I can't turn that off. My other best advice on that is I use a thing called screenshot awesomeness.
I
And
love
what I mean
that.
by that is, it's something that I talk about a lot, but every good email I get, every comment that I get where someone says, Brian, seeing you speak inspired me to do this. Brian, seeing you do this. Brian, your podcast episode changed my mind. I now love my job, whatever it may be. I have a folder on my desktop right now. It's called screenshot. It's called Awesomeness Portfolio. And anytime I'm feeling down, every time I'm like, why am I doing this podcast? I'm only getting a couple thousand downloads. I pull up that folder and I remember, oh my goodness, wow, these people, like I'm impacting anyone and I'm making a difference. And it's those moments that when I'm burnt out or I'm feeling down, I just open that folder and it's immediately like, okay, I got this. I can make it happen. And it's important. We spend so much time on the haters and the bad comments, and AI, you and I have talked about this a lot together offline, right? And I think that's also important, right? Having someone a trusted resource that, hey, are you feeling this way as well? How do I handle this person? But I think one of those
So
things when
true.
you're looking at is you have to be able to balance that. But we spend way too much time on the haters and those that are doubting us. And yet we spent no time on the fans and those that are celebrating us and telling us we're changing life. And so I work really hard at it. When I'm feeling, yesterday afternoon, I'll be real. Yesterday afternoon, I created 6 videos for my mastermind group. I run a speaker mastermind group called the Misfits, and I created 6 videos for that group. And then I got an email that said, Brian, you haven't turned in your video for our event next month that I'm getting paid to do. And I was like, and I was down. I was down. I sat on the couch. I was talking to my girlfriend, and I was just like not in the mood. I had opened my phone and I looked at my screenshot folder, and there was someone on Instagram comments. I said, Brian, I didn't want to go to the event, but you looked so different when your video came on my feed. I bought a ticket, and I'm now going to hire more employees and I double down on what I'm doing. And I read it. It was an Instagram story DM, and right there, I mean, I literally read that, got goosebumps, walked around, got here, pressed the damn button, and did my video. And so I think everyone has to really, we're all human. We all have these ups and downs. It's just a matter of knowing that when you're down, you're going to get back up and find ways to motivate yourself.
Oh, I just love this. This is just so amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all those like amazing tips. But I definitely want to respect your time has been like an hour. We have almost 80 people join us live, watching us from all over the globe. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. So you mentioned that speaker mastermind group. So can you share the link with us or like mention it? So I will find it, share in the comment section just in case people want to learn more about it.
Well, I would love to. I did it as a private invite group where I wanted to test out. My goal is to actually build out a coaching side of the business where it's a one-on-one coaching. But I'm a big believer in validating what I'm doing, and I had a little bit of an internal complex of saying, this way works for Brian Fanzo, but other people take all of my processes as a speaker and also make it work for them. And so I did a closed invite only mastermind where I brought people in, and it's going amazingly. So what I will tell you is that there isn't a link for that mastermind at the moment, but in the middle of August, if you just check up on, follow me on social or check up on brianfanzo.com, I'm going to have a new coaching page that will go up live where I'm going to take on coaching clients now as I've been able to validate the content. And I can tell you right now, I've created, I think, 64 total videos of just for this from within this mastermind where I'm sharing all of my, that's what all this craziness is on the board. It was different whiteboards that I've done, but I appreciate you saying that. At the moment, for me, it's definitely something I'm going to dabble in, but right now it's brianfanzo.com for speaking. isocialfans.com is my media hub. Of course, check out one of the podcasts, but overall, I really appreciate you giving me love there. It's a fun journey. I think for me, coaching and doing things where I can help others, especially those that are my peers, I don't want to take people's money unless I believe and they believe that we can actually make things happen. I'm results oriented. I don't use social media for business just for likes and followers. I have 3 daughters. My girlfriend is a young daughter as well. I need to make money. I need to
absolutely.
And so that's kind of why, for me, launching coaching without validating it first didn't seem like a smart move at the time. But I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of pull that out of my hat in the next couple months.
So excited for it. And quickly mention the names of your 3 podcast brands. So people, like everyone, if you are loving this show, enjoying this, please give us a share. And most importantly, please make sure you follow Brian Fanzo. He is truly amazing. So much awesome content. So thank you. So mention the names of your podcast, and then we'll say bye to people.
Sure, of course. So I have 3 different ones. I call myself the team no niche, right? So I have no niche. I've never really had a niche. When people told me that the riches were in the niches, I was the one that said, well, you're telling me that's the only way you can make it in this world. I want to prove people wrong. So I have 3 podcasts that really hit 3 different types of audiences. The first one is FOMO Fans, FOMO, which stands for the fear of missing out. It's a solo podcast. I've been doing it for a couple of years myself.
I love it. I love it. I love that one.
Thank you. It's, I talk for about 30 minutes on a different topic around digital marketing, entrepreneurship, everything and anything that's in this space. It's called FOMO Fans. My second podcast is actually the one, it's the longest running one. If you're a tech person, if you like the geekier side of what I talk about, I host a podcast with Daniel Newman called Smack Talk, which stands for Social, Mobile, Analytics, and Cloud. It's a very geeky podcast, but it's been sponsored by Adobe, IBM, Dell, Samsung, SAP, It's a more where we just discuss tech topics, things like artificial intelligence, cloud computing. And then the third one is one I teamed up with Amy Landino,
Mhm.
and it's called Just Try This. It's probably the one that most people are listening to at the moment. Sin 1 rolled out earlier this year. And the idea is Amy and I wanted to bring people on the couch with us, and so that they could hear a conversation. We don't interview each other. We don't interview anyone else because we both like to talk and we have a lot to say. But we have a conversation about one topic, and our goal is to bring you on the couch with us. And it's most, I would say, business oriented, not really marketing itself, but we are very raw and real. The first 10 episodes went live as season 1. We're going to jump on and record season 2 very soon on Just Try This. Those are the 3 podcasts that are out there right now. If you just put in iSocial Fans, which is the name of my company and my handle, in any of those podcast players, all 3 of them will come up in your search results, and you can jump in, listen, and pick out which one you like.
Yeah, and after the show is over, I will make sure to share the links, the names in the comment
I
section.
know you rock AI. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much. This is amazing. We have so many people joining us. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you so much, everyone. So next week, I have my friend Mario to talk about how to leverage podcast to grow a successful business. So come join us the same time and same location. And thank you so much again, Brian. Guys, make sure you follow him. He is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. AI. You rock. I tell you what, everybody wants to figure out how to get great interviews. I saw someone commented yesterday and said you have a great, diverse group of people to interview. It's because of your care and dedication and your ability to connect with people at a level that is unlike anyone else. You can ask me to do
Oh,
anything, anytime, AI. I will say yes every time, because people need to understand that's the idea of building true relationships and giving back. I love seeing what you're doing. Your success inspires me. I hope you know that. And I love that you followed me and connected on Snapchat. You asked to volunteer. Can I blog on your website? And just so people understand that, 4 years ago, she wrote a blog about using Snapchat in the classroom. It's now generating, still to this day, 40 to 50 page views on my website a week. And it was from a Snapchat. She just said, would you mind if I contribute to your blog? She was giving me value out from the minute, and that's what you do every day. So thank you, AI, for having me on. Thank you for kind of being
oh.
you're a leader and a shepherd of how you build relationships with people of all walks of life, and do it in a way that is inspiring. So thank you so
I'm
much. Thank you for watching.
I'm going to cry, but thank you so much. It means so much to me. So thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, yeah, and thank you so much, everyone. See you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.